The boardroom fell silent when Penelope Lancaster walked in carrying the quarterly reports, her heels clicking against marble floors that still echoed with memories of a man who would never walk them again. She had been 26 when Marcus died. His heart had simply stopped one Tuesday afternoon while he sat at his desk, reviewing fabric samples for the spring collection. Lancaster Luxury Textiles had been his life's work, a company built from nothing into a $100 million empire that supplied premium fabrics to fashion houses across 3 continents. He had hired Penelope fresh out of business school, recognizing something in her that others had missed. Within 3 years, she had become his right hand, the person who understood his vision better than anyone else in the building. Now, 2 years after his death, she ran the company his children had no interest in touching. They had taken their inheritance and scattered to beaches and ski resorts, content to collect dividends while Penelope did the actual work of keeping their father's legacy alive. The board meetings were mostly formalities. She made the decisions. She signed the contracts. She fought the fights that needed fighting. But today was different because Richard Vaughn was sitting at the conference table, and Richard Vaughn changed every room he entered. Penelope had heard of him, of course. Everyone in the textile and fashion industry knew about Richard Vaughn. At 34, he had built Vaughn Industries into a manufacturing and investment powerhouse worth over $2 billion. He specialized in identifying struggling companies with good bones, injecting capital, and turning them into profit machines. He was known for being ruthless in business but fair in his dealings. He never lied, never cheated, but he also never lost. What Penelope had not expected was how he looked at her when she walked into that boardroom. Not the way men usually looked at her, assessing or dismissive or inappropriately interested. He looked at her the way people looked at other people, with genuine curiosity and attention that made her feel suddenly visible in a way she had not felt since Marcus died. "Miss Lancaster," he said, standing when she entered. The other board members, all men in their 60s, remained seated. "Richard Vaughn, thank you for meeting with me. Mr. Vaughn." She shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the calluses that suggested he did more than push papers. "I understand you are interested in investing in Lancaster Luxury Textiles. I am interested in understanding why a company with your profit margins and market position is not dominating its sector." He smiled, and it reached his eyes. "From what I have reviewed, you have grown revenue by 32% since taking over operations. Your customer retention rate is 94%. Your production efficiency has improved every quarter, yet you are still operating with the same capital structure you had 5 years ago." Penelope set her folder down carefully. "The Lancaster family prefers stability. The Lancaster family is not running this company. You are." Richard gestured to the empty chairs around the table. "May we speak privately?" She glanced at the board members, who were already gathering their things. They knew they were furniture in this room, had known it since she took over. Within moments, she and Richard were alone. "I am not here to take your company from you," he said without preamble. "I am here because I think you are wasting your potential working within constraints that do not serve you or the business Marcus Lancaster built." The sound of Marcus's name from this stranger's mouth felt jarring. "You did not know him." "No, but I know what he created, and I know what you have done with it since he died." Richard opened his own folder, sliding papers across the table. "These are my terms. I invest $40 million for a 25% stake. You retain full operational control. I provide access to my manufacturing network, my distribution contacts, and my capital for expansion. In return, I get quarterly reports and the occasional dinner meeting to discuss strategy." Penelope scanned the documents, her heart beating faster. $40 million would let her open the Asian markets Marcus had always dreamed of entering. It would let her modernize the production facilities and hire the designers she had been courting. It would let her stop fighting with one hand tied behind her back. "Why me?" she asked. "Why this company?" Richard leaned back in his chair, and for a moment something shifted in his expression, something almost sad. "Because I have spent the last 10 years of my life building companies and making money, and I realized recently that I have nothing to show for it except a very large bank account and a very empty house. I want to be part of something that matters. Marcus Lancaster built something that matters. You are keeping it alive. I want to help." It was the most honest thing anyone had said to her in a boardroom possibly ever. "I need to think about it," she said. "Of course." Richard stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "Take whatever time you need. But Penelope, if I may call you that, do not let fear of change keep you from becoming what you are meant to be. Marcus hired you for a reason. He trained you for a reason. He trusted you with his life's work. Honor that trust by letting it grow." After he left, Penelope sat alone in the boardroom for 20 minutes, staring at the contracts and thinking about ghosts. She called Richard 3 days later and invited him to tour the production facility. If he was going to invest in Lancaster luxury textiles, he needed to understand what they actually did. He arrived at the warehouse at 8 in the morning wearing jeans and a work shirt, which immediately made her like him more than she wanted to. "I did not expect you to dress down," she said. "I did not expect you to give me a real tour," he grinned. "Most CEOs who invite investors to visit keep them in the front offices and show them PowerPoint presentations. I am not most CEOs. I noticed." She showed him everything. The massive looms that wove silk and cotton and linen into fabrics so fine they felt like water. The dyeing rooms where colors were mixed with chemistry and art in equal measure. The quality control stations where every inch of fabric was inspected by hand. The design studios where next season's patterns were being born. Richard asked questions that proved he had done his research. He understood thread count and weave patterns. He knew the difference between Egyptian cotton and Pima cotton. He caught a mistake in the inventory system that her own managers had missed. "You know textiles," she said as they walked between rows of fabric bolts that stretched 30 feet high. "My grandfather owned a garment factory in Pennsylvania. I spent summers there as a kid, learning the business. He lost everything in the recession, but I never forgot what he taught me." Richard ran his hand along a bolt of midnight blue silk. "There is something real about making physical things, about creating beauty that people can touch. That is why I wanted in on this. I am tired of investing in software and algorithms." They had lunch in her office, sandwiches from the deli down the street, sitting on opposite sides of her desk, while she peppered him with questions about his distribution network and his vision for expansion. "You think like Marcus did," she said finally. "Long term, building something that lasts instead of something that just makes quick money." "Is that why you stayed?" Richard asked. "After he died, you could have gone anywhere. Big companies would have fought over you, but you stayed here." Penelope looked around her office, at the photos on the wall of fabric samples and fashion shows, at the shelves filled with industry awards and sample books. "I stayed because this place still feels alive to me. Because every decision I make, I can hear his voice in my head asking me if I am doing right by the company and the people who depend on it. Because walking away would have felt like letting him die twice." Richard was quiet for a long moment. "He was lucky to have you. I was lucky to have him. He gave me a chance when no one else would. I had good grades and a decent resume, but I was young and I was a woman in an industry run by old men. Marcus did not care. He said I saw patterns no one else saw, that I understood quality in a way that could not be taught. He made me believe I could do this. He was right. Something in the way Richard said it made Penelope's chest tighten. It was not pity or condescension. It was respect, pure and simple, from someone who understood what it meant to build something from scratch. She signed the investment papers a week later. Richard Vaughan became a part owner of Lancaster Luxury Textiles, and Penelope's life began to shift in ways she had not anticipated. The first change was practical. With Richard's capital and connections, she opened negotiations with manufacturers in Vietnam and Thailand. She hired 3 new designers, young talents who brought fresh perspectives to the classic Lancaster aesthetic. She upgraded the computer systems and streamlined the supply chain. The company grew faster in 3 months than it had in the previous year. The second change was personal. Richard kept his promise about operational control, but he also kept showing up, not to interfere, but to help. He came to production meetings and offered insights. He joined calls with major clients and closed deals with his combination of charm and business acumen. He worked alongside the warehouse crew during a major shipping crisis, hauling boxes and reorganizing inventory until 2 in the morning. He treated Penelope like a partner, not an employee he was monitoring. He asked her opinion and actually listened. He challenged her ideas but backed down when she made good arguments. He celebrated wins and helped solve problems. He made her feel like she was not alone in the fight to keep Marcus's legacy alive. And he made her laugh, which she had not done nearly enough of in the past 2 years. "I cannot believe you told them we would deliver 5,000 yards by Friday," Penelope said, pacing her office after a particularly aggressive call with a fashion house in Paris. "We do not have 5,000 yards. We have 3,000 yards and a prayer." "We have 4,000 yards and a motivated production team," Richard corrected, completely unfazed. "I already talked to the shift managers. They are willing to run extended hours if we bring in dinner and pay overtime." "You already arranged this." "I had faith you would say yes to the contract." "That is not faith, that is presumption," Richard grinned. "Come on, Penelope, when have I been wrong yet?" She threw a fabric sample at him which he caught without looking. "You are insufferable. I am effective. There is a difference." They delivered the 5,000 yards on Thursday afternoon. The Paris fashion house sent a thank you note and doubled their next order. Richard brought champagne to the office and insisted the entire production team join them in toasting the success. Penelope watched him joke with the loom operators and compliment the dyers on their color work, and she felt something dangerous blooming in her chest. She had been so focused on the company, on honoring Marcus's memory and proving she could do this, that she had not let herself want anything else. She had not let herself want someone else, but Richard made her want things, made her remember she was 28 years old and alive, not just a caretaker of someone else's dream. "You are staring," Richard said, appearing at her elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. "I am thinking," she corrected, accepting the glass. "About what?" "About how different this place feels now than it did 6 months ago." Richard clinked his glass against hers. "Different good or different bad? Different good, different scary. Scary how?" Penelope met his eyes, those clear gray eyes that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed walls. "Scary like I am starting to forget what it feels like to do this alone." Something shifted in Richard's expression, a softening around his mouth, a slight lean in her direction. "Would that be such a bad thing?" Before she could answer, one of the designers called Richard over to settle a debate about pattern placement, and the moment passed. But Penelope felt it humming between them for the rest of the evening, this acknowledgement of something more than business partnership growing between them. The next few weeks were consumed by the Asian expansion project. Penelope flew to Vietnam to tour potential manufacturing facilities, and Richard came with her, claiming he needed to verify quality standards personally. They spent 5 days traveling between cities, meeting with factory owners, negotiating contracts, and navigating the complex logistics of international textile production. It was exhausting and exhilarating, and somewhere between Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, the professional boundaries between them began to blur beyond recognition. "I cannot believe you haggled over fabric prices in Vietnamese," Penelope said over dinner on their third night, still amazed by the contract they had just secured. "My college roommate was from Saigon. He taught me enough to get by." Richard poured more wine into her glass. "Besides, people respect you more when you try to speak their language, even if you sound like a toddler doing it. You sounded better than a toddler, barely." They laughed together, the comfortable laughter of people who had spent intense time in each other's company, and found they liked what they discovered. The restaurant was small and local, the kind of place tourists never found, with food that tasted like someone's grandmother had cooked it with love and decades of practice. "Can I ask you something personal?" Penelope said, the wine making her brave, always. "Why are you not married? Or in a relationship? I mean, you are successful and reasonably attractive and not a complete jerk. Someone should have locked you down by now." Richard smiled, but it did not reach his eyes this time. "Reasonably attractive. I am crushed. Answer the question." He was quiet for a moment, turning his wine glass in slow circles. "I was engaged once. Her name was Catherine. We met in business school and everyone said we were perfect together. Same ambitions, same goals, same 5-year plan. We were going to build an empire together, have 2.5 kids and a house in Connecticut. What happened? I realized I did not love her. I loved the idea of her, the partnership we represented on paper. But when I imagined spending 50 years with her, all I felt was tired." Richard looked up, meeting Penelope's eyes across the table. "I broke it off 2 months before the wedding. She called me a coward. She was probably right." "She was not right," Penelope said firmly. "You were honest. That took courage, not cowardice. Marrying her when you did not love her, that would have been the cowardly choice." "Is that what you tell yourself?" The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean? You have not dated anyone since Marcus died, have you? No relationships, no casual dinners, nothing." Penelope felt her cheeks flush. "I have been busy running a company. You have been hiding behind a dead man's memory because it is safer than risking getting hurt again." The words should have made her angry, but they just made her sad because they were true. "Marcus was not. We were never together romantically. He was married. I respected him, learned from him, but I never loved him that way." "Then what are you running from?" "I am not running." "Penelope." Richard reached across the table, taking her hand. His palm was warm and calloused, steady. "I see you working yourself into exhaustion every day. I see you carrying the weight of an entire company on your shoulders like you have something to prove. I see you treating yourself like you do not deserve anything beyond the company's success. And I cannot figure out if you are punishing yourself or protecting yourself." She wanted to pull her hand away, to deflect with humor or change the subject. But the truth was, she was tired of running, tired of using the company as a shield against her own life. "Both," she admitted quietly. "After Marcus died, everyone expected me to fail. The board, the Lancaster children, the industry. They thought I was too young, too inexperienced, that I had only succeeded because of him. So I worked twice as hard as anyone else to prove them wrong. And somewhere along the way, I forgot how to be anything except the person keeping Marcus's dream alive." Richard squeezed her hand. "You are not keeping his dream alive. You are building your own dream in the house he helped you design. There is a difference. Is there? Yes. Because Marcus is gone and you are still here. And you deserve to live like someone who is still here, not like a ghost haunting someone else's legacy. Penelope felt tears prick her eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. I do not know how to do that. Start small. Start with admitting that you are allowed to want things for yourself, that you are allowed to be happy. What if I fail? Then you fail. And you get up and try again. That is what living people do. They sat there in that tiny Vietnamese restaurant, hands linked across the table, while something fundamental shifted between them. It was not just attraction anymore, though that was certainly there. It was recognition. Two people who had spent so long building things for other people, for legacy and ambition and the ghosts of expectation, seeing each other clearly for the first time. When they returned to the hotel that night, Richard walked Penelope to her room and kissed her forehead before saying goodnight. It was chaste and gentle, and it made her want things she had not let herself want in years. The next morning, they signed contracts with 2 Vietnamese manufacturers and flew back to the States with a plan to triple production capacity within 6 months. They also flew back with something unspoken humming between them, a question neither was quite ready to ask out loud. Back in Connecticut, life took on a new rhythm. Penelope and Richard fell into a pattern of working together during the day and finding excuses to spend time together in the evenings. They had dinner at least 3 times a week, sometimes to discuss business, but increasingly just to talk. They went to industry events together, presenting a united front that made competitors nervous and allies excited. They texted each other ridiculous observations throughout the day, inside jokes about demanding clients and production mishaps that no one else would find funny. Penelope's assistant started assuming Richard would be at any meeting Penelope attended. The production staff referred to them as a unit. Even the Lancaster children, who had mostly ignored the company since their father's death, noticed something was different when they came in for the annual shareholders' meeting. "You seem happy," Marcus's daughter Jennifer said, cornering Penelope in the hallway. "Different than you were." "The company is doing well," Penelope replied carefully. "I am not talking about the company, I am talking about you." Jennifer smiled, and Penelope could see Marcus in her expression. "Dad would be glad. He always worried you worked too hard, that you never let yourself have a life outside these walls. He said that all the time. He felt guilty about it, actually, said he had created a workaholic in his own image." Jennifer touched Penelope's arm. "Richard seems like a good man." Dad would have approved. After Jennifer left, Penelope stood in the hallway for a long moment, processing this revelation. Marcus had worried about her, had wanted her to have more than just the company. The realization felt like permission, like a blessing from beyond. That evening, she showed up at Richard's office without calling first. He was still at his desk at 8 p.m., which did not surprise her. Workaholics recognize their own kind. "I need to tell you something," she said, standing in his doorway. Richard looked up from his computer, immediately giving her his full attention. "Okay, I am terrible at this, at relationships and feelings and admitting I want things. I spent so long being professional and careful and perfect that I forgot how to be messy and human." "Penelope, let me finish." She stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. "I like you. More than I should, probably, given that we work together and you are a major investor in my company, and there are probably 17 different reasons this is a bad idea, but I do not care anymore. I am tired of being scared. I am tired of acting like I do not want things. So I am telling you right now that I want you. And if you do not feel the same way, that is fine. We can pretend this conversation never happened and go back to being professional partners. But I needed you to know." Richard stood up slowly, walking around his desk until he was standing directly in front of her. "I have been in love with you since the day you threw that fabric sample at my head and told me I was insufferable. That was not love. That was irritation. For you, maybe. For me, it was the moment I realized I had found someone who was not impressed by my money or my reputation, who challenged me and matched me and made me want to be better at everything I did." He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've been trying to figure out how to tell you for months without scaring you away or making things weird between us. But Penelope, I am completely gone for you, have been for a while now." She kissed him before he could say anything else, rising on her toes and pulling him down to her level. It was not a gentle kiss, not the tentative exploration of new lovers. It was urgent and hungry, 2 years of loneliness and wanting compressed into a single moment of connection. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Richard rested his forehead against hers. "I have been waiting for that for a very long time. You should have said something sooner. I was trying to be respectful, professional." "I hate professional," Richard laughed, the sound filling his office with warmth. "Noted." They dated like teenagers, despite both being adults with demanding careers and responsibilities. They snuck kisses in the warehouse when they thought no one was looking. They held hands under the conference table during boring board meetings. They texted each other constantly, silly messages that made them both smile at inappropriate times. They spent weekends together, sometimes working but more often just being with each other, learning the 1,000 small details that separated professional admiration from actual love. Penelope learned that Richard sang off-key in the shower and made terrible coffee but excellent omelets, that he was ticklish on his left side but not his right, that he had a scar on his shoulder from a childhood bicycle accident and a habit of drumming his fingers when he was thinking, that he slept on the right side of the bed and stole covers without realizing it. Richard learned that Penelope talked in her sleep sometimes, usually about fabric orders and production schedules, that she was allergic to shellfish and terrified of spiders, that she cried at romantic comedies but stayed stoic through horror films, that she took her coffee with too much sugar and read mystery novels to relax, that she had wanted to be a fashion designer before business school but had convinced herself she was not creative enough. "You are absolutely creative enough," Richard said when she finally admitted this, lying together on his couch on a Sunday afternoon. "I have seen your design suggestions. The patterns you came up with for the spring collection were brilliant. Those were just modifications of existing designs. They were innovations that made those designs better. Penelope, you have been so busy managing the business side that you forgot you are allowed to be creative too. Marcus saw that in you. That is why he trained you in every aspect of the company, not just operations and finance." "I cannot run the company and design." "Why not? You are already doing the work of 3 people. What is one more hat to wear?" Richard kissed her temple. "Or better yet, hire someone to handle more of the operations so you have time to do the parts you actually love." It was a revolutionary thought. For 2 years, Penelope had been so focused on proving she could handle everything that she had never considered she did not have to handle everything alone. That delegation was not weakness but strategy. She hired a chief operating officer the following month, a brilliant woman named Susan, who had 20 years of experience in textile manufacturing, and absolutely no ego about taking direction from someone younger. With Susan handling day-to-day operations, Penelope found herself with time to actually breathe, time to work with the design team, time to visit clients and build relationships, Time to think strategically about where the company was going instead of just frantically keeping it running. Time to have a life with Richard that was not squeezed into the margins of 18-hour workdays. They went public with their relationship 6 months after that first kiss in Richard's office. The industry response was exactly what Penelope had expected. A mixture of genuine happiness for them and speculation about whether this was a calculated business move. She stopped caring what people thought about the 5th time someone asked if she and Richard were planning to merge their companies. "We are not merging anything except our personal lives," she told a reporter at a fashion industry gala. "Lancaster Luxury Textiles is mine. Vaughan Industries is his. We work together because we respect each other and our skills complement each other. That is it." But surely there are synergies. There are synergies in every successful relationship, professional or personal. That does not mean we are plotting some corporate takeover. Richard appeared at her elbow, sliding an arm around her waist. "What my brilliant girlfriend is diplomatically not saying is that we are both perfectly capable of running our own companies. We help each other because that is what partners do, not because either of us needs the other to function. So this is not a strategic partnership. This is a romantic relationship between two people who happen to work in the same industry," Penelope said firmly. "If that bothers you, I suggest you examine why successful women dating successful men is so difficult for you to accept at face value." The reporter backed off. Richard squeezed her waist. "You are scary when you are defending our relationship." "Good. Maybe people will stop asking invasive questions." They did not stop, but Penelope stopped caring. She was too happy to let other people's skepticism touch her. For the first time since Marcus died, she felt like herself. Not the person everyone expected her to be, not the guardian of someone else's legacy, but Penelope Lancaster. Businesswoman, creative partner, designer, girlfriend, human being with wants and needs and dreams of her own. A year into their relationship, Richard took her to meet his family. His parents lived in upstate New York in a farmhouse his great-grandparents had built in the 1920s. They were warm and welcoming, the kind of people who hugged strangers and insisted everyone eat too much at dinner. "Richard has told us so much about you," his mother said, pulling Penelope into the kitchen to help with dessert. "About the company you run and how brilliant you are," he exaggerates. He does not, actually. Richard is many things, but he does not exaggerate, especially about people he loves. His mother handed Penelope a mixing bowl. "He has never brought anyone home before, not even Catherine, and they were engaged," he mentioned her. She was wrong for him. Beautiful and smart and completely wrong. They wanted the same things on paper, but they did not actually like each other. "Not the way you two like each other." "How can you tell?" Penelope asked. "The way he looks at you when you are not paying attention, the way he relaxes when you walk into a room, the way he talks about your work like he is proud of you, not threatened by you." His mother smiled. "That is how you know it is real, when someone's success makes you happy instead of competitive." Dinner was loud and chaotic, with Richard's 2 younger sisters and their families filling the farmhouse with noise and laughter. Penelope felt welcomed in a way she had not experienced in years, included without question or judgment. Richard's father cornered her after dinner to ask detailed questions about textile manufacturing, genuinely interested in the technical aspects of her work. "You are good for him," he said finally. "He seems settled in a way he never has before, like he finally figured out what he was working so hard for." That night, lying in the guest room in Richard's childhood bed, Penelope felt something click into place. This was what family felt like when it worked right. This was what she wanted to build with Richard, a life that was not just about business success but about connection and belonging and love. Your family is wonderful, she whispered into the darkness. Richard pulled her closer. They love you already. How can you tell? My mom used her special china for dinner. She only does that for people she thinks are sticking around. Penelope smiled against his chest. Am I sticking around? I hope so, because I am not letting you go. The company continued to grow. The Asian expansion was a massive success, opening up markets that doubled their revenue within 18 months. Penelope hired more designers and expanded the product line, moving beyond just fabric to include finished textile products, luxury bedding, custom curtains, designer upholstery. Lancaster Luxury Textiles became a name everyone in the high-end home goods market knew, synonymous with quality and innovation. Richard's investment paid off spectacularly, but he reinvested his profits back into the company, funding research into sustainable fabric production and eco-friendly dyeing processes. Together, they pushed Lancaster Luxury Textiles into the future while honoring its past. On the 3rd anniversary of Marcus's death, Penelope visited his grave for the first time since the funeral. She brought flowers and stood in the quiet cemetery, trying to find words for the man who had changed her life. I did it, she said finally. I kept your company alive. Better than alive, actually. We are thriving, making things you would be proud of, going places you always dreamed of going. She paused, wiping her eyes. And I met someone. His name is Richard. You would like him, I think. He sees the company the way you did, as something worth building, something that matters beyond just profit margins. He sees me the way you did too, as someone capable of more than I give myself credit for. The wind rustled through the trees, the only answer Marcus could give. I am happy, Penelope said, and realized it was true. I am actually happy, not just successful or fulfilled, but happy. I wanted you to know that. Wherever you are, whatever comes next, I am okay. Better than okay, so you can rest now. I have got this. Richard was waiting by the car, giving her space but staying close. When she walked back to him, he wrapped his arms around her without saying anything. Sometimes silence was the best response. That evening, Richard made dinner at his place, a simple pasta dish he had learned from his Italian grandmother. They ate on the balcony overlooking the city, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. I have been thinking, Richard said, refilling their wine glasses. That is usually dangerous, he smiled. I have been thinking about the future, about where we are going, both the company and us. Penelope's heart started beating faster. Okay, Lancaster Luxury Textiles does not need me anymore. You have built an incredible team. Susan is handling operations beautifully. The company is financially stable and positioned for long-term growth. My involvement at this point is really just advisory. Are you saying you want to sell your stake? Penelope tried to keep the disappointment out of her voice. No. I am saying I want to invest in a different kind of future with you. Richard reached across the table, taking her hand. I'm saying I want to marry you, Penelope Lancaster. I want to build a life with you that is not just about business and success, but about partnership and family and growing old together. I want to wake up next to you for the next 50 years and argue about fabric patterns and raise kids who will probably inherit both our stubborn streaks. I want everything with you. Penelope felt tears streaming down her face. That was a terrible proposal. You did not even have a ring. I have a ring. Richard pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds. Your birthstone. I had it custom-made 3 months ago. I have been carrying it around waiting for the right moment, and then I realized the right moment was just when I could not wait anymore to ask. You are such a romantic. Is that a yes? Yes, you idiot. Of course, yes. Richard stood up so fast he nearly knocked over his chair, pulling Penelope into his arms and kissing her like the world was ending, and she was the only thing keeping it together. The ring fit perfectly on her finger, catching the last light of the sunset and throwing rainbows across the balcony. They got married 6 months later in a ceremony that blended both their worlds. The wedding was held at the Lancaster Luxury Textiles warehouse, transformed into a stunning venue with fabric draping from the ceiling in colors that moved from deep blue through purple into soft pink, like watching a sunset unfold overhead. The guest list included Richard's family, Penelope's small circle of friends, the entire company staff, industry colleagues, and the Lancaster children, who all came and genuinely seemed happy for her. Jennifer Lancaster gave a toast that made Penelope cry. "My father had many talents, but his greatest was seeing potential in people before they saw it in themselves. He saw it in Penelope when she was fresh out of school with more ambition than experience. He trained her, challenged her, and trusted her with everything he had built. And she proved him right in ways that exceeded even his ambitious expectations. Dad would be so proud of what you have accomplished, Penelope, and he would be so happy to see you happy. Welcome to the family. You have always been part of it, but now it is official." Richard's father gave a toast that made Richard turn red. "I have watched my son build an empire and accomplish things I could never have imagined, but I have never seen him as content as he has been this past year and a half. That is the real measure of success, finding someone who makes the hard days easier and the good days better. Penelope, you have given my son something no amount of money could buy. Thank you for that." The dancing went late into the night, and at some point, Penelope found herself standing with Richard in the center of the warehouse floor, surrounded by the tools and materials of the business she had fought so hard to build, feeling like every difficult decision and long night and moment of doubt had been leading to exactly this. "We did it," she said. "Did what? Built something real, something that lasts." Richard kissed her forehead. "We are just getting started." They honeymooned in Italy. 2 weeks of exploring textile mills and fabric markets during the day, and eating incredible food and making love in beautiful hotel rooms at night. It was perfect, the kind of trip that was both vacation and busman's holiday, because they genuinely loved their work and could not completely turn it off. When they returned, Penelope discovered she was pregnant. It was earlier than they had planned, but not unwelcome. Richard cried when she told him, actual tears streaming down his face as he pulled her into his arms and held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "We are having a baby," he kept repeating, like he could not quite believe it. "We are having a baby," Penelope confirmed, laughing through her own tears. Pregnancy was harder than she expected. Morning sickness was a cruel misnomer because she felt nauseous all day. Her back hurt. Her feet swelled. She had to pee constantly. But Richard was amazing through all of it, bringing her crackers at odd hours and rubbing her feet and telling her she was beautiful even when she felt like a beached whale. Work became more complicated too. Penelope tried to maintain her normal schedule, but her body had other ideas. By her second trimester, she had to admit defeat and delegate more responsibilities. Susan stepped up beautifully, handling daily operations while Penelope focused on strategic planning and design work she could do from home. "This is killing you," Richard observed one evening, finding her crying over her laptop. "I cannot do it all," Penelope said. "I cannot run the company the way I used to and be pregnant and prepare to be a mother. I am failing at everything." "You are not failing at anything. You are learning to accept that you are human and have limitations, which is a good thing, by the way. Our kid is going to need a mother who understands that she does not have to be perfect all the time." "I am scared," Penelope admitted. "Scared I am going to mess this up. The company or the baby or us." Richard pulled her into his lap, careful of her growing belly. "We are going to mess up all of it at some point. That is what life is. A series of mistakes and course corrections and trying again. But we are going to do it together, and that makes all the difference." Their daughter was born on a Tuesday afternoon in March, screaming her way into the world with the kind of determination that made both parents laugh through their tears. They named her Rosemary, after Richard's grandmother, and because Penelope had always loved the herb that meant remembrance. Holding Rosemary for the first time, Penelope felt something fundamental shift in her understanding of the world. This tiny person was depending on her, not for business success or strategic vision, but for love and care and presence. It was terrifying and beautiful in equal measure. "She looks like you," Richard said, touching Rosemary's tiny hand. "She looks like an angry potato." "An angry potato who looks like you." Penelope laughed, exhausted and sore and more in love than she had ever been in her life. "We made a person. We made a perfect person." Maternity leave was both wonderful and challenging. Penelope loved being home with Rosemary, learning her rhythms and needs, marveling at every tiny development. But she also missed work, missed the creative challenge and the satisfaction of building something. Richard worked from home as much as possible, taking conference calls while wearing the baby in a carrier, changing diapers between investor meetings. "We are both insane," Penelope said one night, the two of them functioning on 3 hours of sleep and pure stubbornness. "Probably," Richard agreed. "But we are insane together, so it evens out." When Penelope returned to work, they hired a nanny and restructured their schedules so at least one parent was home every evening. It was not perfect, and there were days when Penelope felt pulled in 17 directions at once. But it worked because they made it work, because they communicated and adjusted and remembered that the point was not to be perfect, but to be present for each other and their daughter. Lancaster Luxury Textiles celebrated its 15th anniversary with a massive party and a profile in Textile World magazine that called Penelope one of the most innovative leaders in the industry. The article talked about her journey from Marcus's protege to CEO, about the company's growth and evolution, about her partnership with Richard and their family. The reporter had asked her what Marcus would think of what she had built. "I think he would be proud," Penelope had said. "Not because I did exactly what he would have done, but because I took what he taught me and made it my own. He gave me a foundation. I built the house." Looking at the finished article, holding Rosemary on her lap while Richard read over her shoulder, Penelope felt a sense of completion she had not known she was searching for. This was success, not just the numbers and awards, but the life she had built, the company that thrived, the man she loved, the daughter they were raising together, the balance she had finally found between honoring the past and creating the future. "You did good," Richard said, kissing the top of her head. "We did good," Penelope corrected. "Fair enough." Rosemary grabbed the magazine, crumpling the pages with her chubby hands. Neither parent stopped her. Some things were more important than perfect preservation. 2 years later, they had a son named Robert, and the chaos of their lives increased exponentially. 2 kids, 2 careers, 1 company, and a relationship that somehow kept getting stronger instead of fraying under the pressure. They fought sometimes, usually about whose turn it was to handle the late-night feeding or whether they were overextended professionally. But they always came back together, always remembered that they were on the same team. On what would have been Marcus's 65th birthday, Penelope took the kids to the office and showed them the photos of the man whose vision had started everything. Rosemary was 5 and full of questions. Robert was 3 and mostly interested in playing with fabric samples. "Did you know him?" Rosemary asked, pointing at Marcus's picture. "I did. He was my boss and my teacher and my friend. He built this company from nothing, and he trusted me to take care of it when he was gone." "Are you going to die too?" The question hit Penelope in the chest. "Someday, yes, but not for a very long time, I hope. And then who will take care of the company?" Penelope looked at her daughter's serious face, at her son playing with fabric that would one day become beautiful things, and felt the circle of legacy completing itself. "I do not know yet. Maybe you if you want to. Maybe someone else who loves it like I do. But that is a long time from now. Right now, I am just going to keep building it and making it better." Richard appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame with that smile that still made her heart skip. "Are we doing a tour?" "We are learning history," Penelope said. He walked over, picking up Robert before the boy could unroll an entire bolt of silk. "Important stuff." They took a family photo in front of Marcus's portrait, the 4 of them standing in the warehouse that had become the foundation of their lives. Later, Penelope would frame that photo and put it in her office, a reminder of where she had been and where she was going. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Richard found Penelope in her home office reviewing designs for the next collection. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You know what Marcus would say if he could see you now?" Richard asked. "What?" "Well done. Well done, kiddo." Penelope leaned back into his embrace, feeling the weight of years and choices and love settling around her like the finest fabric. "Yeah, I think he would." They stood there together in the quiet house, 2 people who had found each other when they were both a little lost, who had built something beautiful and lasting not just in business but in life. Outside, the world kept turning. Companies rose and fell. Trends came and went. But inside this house, inside this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Lancaster Luxury Textiles went on to become a $150 million company, expanding into international markets and sustainable production that set industry standards. Penelope was featured in Forbes and Fast Company, recognized as one of the most innovative CEOs of her generation. Richard's Vaughan Industries continued to grow, but he stayed involved with Lancaster as both investor and partner, the 2 of them building something together that was bigger than either could have created alone. Their children grew up running through warehouse aisles and sitting in on design meetings. Rosemary showed an early interest in fashion design, filling notebooks with sketches of dresses and patterns. Robert was more interested in the business side, asking questions about profit margins and distribution at an age when most kids were worried about video games. "We are raising mini versions of ourselves," Richard said one night, watching Rosemary and Robert argue about whether a new fabric line should prioritize aesthetics or sustainability. "Is that good or bad?" Penelope asked. "Good, I think, as long as they are also themselves." They made sure their kids understood the value of what they had been given, the privilege and responsibility that came with it. They took family trips to the factories and introduced them to the people who made the company run. They taught them about hard work and integrity and treating people with respect regardless of their position. On Penelope's 38th birthday, Jennifer Lancaster called with news. The remaining Lancaster children had discussed it and wanted to sell their shares in the company. They were offering Penelope first right of refusal. "We know Dad wanted you to have it," Jennifer said. "You have made it yours in every way that matters. It is time to make it official." With Richard's help, Penelope secured financing and bought out the Lancaster family's remaining stake. Lancaster Luxury Textiles became fully hers, not through inheritance or proxy but through purchase and earned ownership. It felt right, like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. They changed the company name slightly, adding Penelope's mark to Marcus's legacy. Lancaster and Vaughan Textiles, a partnership that acknowledged both the foundation and the future. The rebrand launched with a new collection that combined traditional techniques with innovative sustainable materials, earning coverage in every major fashion and business publication. Marcus's portrait stayed on the wall, a reminder of where it all began. But now Penelope's photo hung beside it, and eventually there was space for Richard too. The past and present in conversation, the way it was supposed to be. Penelope sometimes thought about the woman she had been when Marcus died, frightened and determined and so focused on proving herself that she forgot to live. She was grateful to that woman for getting her through, but she was also glad to have left her behind. The person she had become was stronger and softer in equal measure, someone who understood that success was not just about what you built, but who you built it with. On lazy Sunday mornings when the kids were occupied and work could wait, Richard and Penelope would lie in bed and talk about everything and nothing. Plans for the company, concerns about the kids, memories of how they met, dreams about growing old together. Do you ever regret it? Penelope asked one morning. Tying yourself to me and the company, you could have invested in anything, gone anywhere. Richard rolled over to face her, his gray eyes clear and certain. Not for a single second. You are the best investment I ever made, and I am not talking about money. You made me remember why I got into business in the first place. To build things that matter. To work with people who care. To create something lasting. You gave me a purpose beyond just accumulating wealth. I love you, Penelope said, the words as true as the first time she said them. I love you too, always have, always will. They kissed in the morning light, two people who had found each other when they were both running from something and had learned to run toward each other instead. The company thrived. Their children grew. Their love deepened with time instead of fading. And Marcus Lancaster's legacy lived on, not trapped in amber but evolving and growing, exactly as he would have wanted. The warehouse where it all began still stood, looms clicking and fabric flowing, creating beauty from thread and skill and vision. Penelope walked those floors regularly, remembering the young woman who had first stood there uncertain and afraid. That woman would be proud of what she had become. Marcus would be proud. But most importantly, Penelope was proud of herself. She had done what Marcus asked when he hired her all those years ago. She had seen patterns no one else saw. She had understood quality. She had built something that lasted. And in the process, she had built a life worth living, filled with love and family and work that mattered. Standing in the warehouse with Richard beside her and their future unfolding ahead of them, Penelope Lancaster Vaughan understood what it truly meant to honor someone's memory. It was not about preserving the past unchanged. It was about taking what they taught you and building something new. It was about living fully, loving deeply, and creating beauty wherever you could. The looms kept clicking. The fabric kept flowing. And life, beautiful and complicated and worth every struggle, continued on.